Welcome to VolleyTalk alongside Pearson Austin. I'm Elliot Skelly. Joining us today, the head coach of the St. Francis DeSales Stallions, Andrea Navar. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good.
Good.
So you've been a big part of DeSales runs one of the top teams in Division Two over the years. Can you talk about how you got your start with the Stallions and how it led you to the head coaching job?
Yeah, I've been a teacher at DeSales for 19 years. Kind of got met the right people to get me a job as a science teacher, and that person happened to be the girls' head coach back in I guess it was '06. And I was a freshman coach for a long time. Went through a bunch of head coaches with the girls, and then I met Andy Feltz, who started our boys program at DeSales. I think it was like 2013 is when I started volunteering for their program and eventually left the girls program to focus in with the boys. And probably the year that we won states back in 2023, Andy had kind of thrown out some ideas that maybe it was his time to retire. So yeah, it was just kind of like a natural fit. I'd been with him for probably 10 years at that point as an assistant. So know the kids, know the program. It was very much you know, it takes a village kind of experience with our program. So I think that the move to head coach was actually pretty comfortable for me. The background, the administrative stuff that's added on to the plate that I already have as a teacher. But the kids are great, family's great, and got a lot of support from the administration. So it's been pretty seamless.
For sure. Now, you talked about Andy Feltz in that 2023 state championship run. When we talked to him after that championship, he described you to us as often perhaps having more technical volleyball knowledge than he did. What was your working dynamic like with him?
Honestly, I think it was a great partnership. I mean, Andy is the brains of the operation. He loves volleyball. He knows volleyball. He sees it so well. Um, I think for me, I've just always loved working with kids and trying to train them and fix things from experiences that I've had as a player, and through, decades of coaching. So I just think it was a great partnership. There would be times where I would run practice and it didn't seem like the kids would skip a beat. So I don't know how it is. Maybe it's an Andrea, Andrew kind of thing that just worked out so well for us. But yeah, it's been great.
You talked
And
about
he
that. I'm sorry,
and
good.
he's still around. He's still around. So
Yeah,
if you
that
didn't
is good.
know, Andy Phelps does not like actually retire ever. He's still being an assistant for my program now. So
He's a
he's
hard
not leaving.
worker.
He
Yeah.
is.
Well, you look at that. You talk about that 2023 group that won the state championship. I mean, consensus favorite all year. We're able to, keep it going and finish the job. What do you think made that group so special? And do you try to emulate that with the teams you have now?
Yeah, I think that group, there was just very strong friendships. I think a lot of the kids had known each other, not necessarily from playing volleyball, but just growing up with each other, middle school experiences. And so having that deep bond as just people helped them to push each other and created the success that we obviously had. That's something that I am trying to continue with my current players. They may not necessarily be in the same peer group, but when we are in the gym, we are a family. And that's actually one of our cheers that we always end our, nights with. And, it's not always easy with teenagers. And there's obviously going to be, ups and downs with us. But at the end of the day, we're only going to be successful if we stick together and work hard for each other.
Now, taking a look at your schedule, you guys competed at the first ever CCL Central Catholic League Challenge, hosted by St. Charles, and then also featured Bishop Hartley and Bishop Watterson as the other two CCL teams, while bringing in some out-of-region teams to compete. What was that region like this past Saturday?
I thought that the event was great. We had always kind of looked up the CCL. We've kind of always looked up to what the Cincinnati area was doing with their invitations to teams from out of the area, and Columbus being centralized. We were like, hey, let's see if we can bring some Cleveland teams down and some Cincinnati Dayton teams up and see how this goes. And I would say the competition was great. I mean, even though most of the matches probably went three sets. I think that it gave us a good idea before we start our own league matches, which we started last night, to see where we size up and for them as well. And I think that most teams were generally happy, and we hope that this is the first of many years to come with that event.
Yeah. So Cincinnati, you're referencing the GCL challenge, right?
Yes. Yep.
So we see
Yep.
that in the OCC challenge. I think it's awesome when these big leagues have all those, like inter-conference rivalries going on. That's awesome. So we don't know regional assignments yet, but we can kind of guess maybe Mount Vernon comes in, maybe Carroll, who's looking more competitive, comes in too. And then obviously you got the CCL, which is always a staple in the region. What do you think your team has to do to kind of level up to that regional contender level?
Um, I I honestly think that it just takes a lot of fight, and no region is easy, no experience is easy. And as teenagers, teaching them, coaching them, it's a roller coaster. And I just think that keeping the grind going, with our program, we don't have a ton of club players. So we spend most of the season, or at least the front of the season, kind of reintroducing the ideas of volleyball and getting them back into the flow of things. A lot of other programs in our region are going to have club players. And I just think the experience that we can give our kids, the schedules that we can build. I mean, this region is probably going to be very, very tough. And I'm proud of whatever my boys are able to do with this region, and bringing Mount Vernon down if
Yeah.
they happen to end up in our region. That's obviously amazing for our sport, and it just builds the competitiveness, and I'm here for it, and that's why I'm here doing what I do.
Now you do a lot of work with volleyball in Ohio. You also do some work with the NCVF, which provides a lot of opportunities to continue competing at a high level for volleyball for thousands of people on college club teams. For those who may be unaware, what is the NCVF and what is your role there?
Yeah, so the NCBF is the National Collegiate Volleyball Federation, and what it is, it's a organization that oversees college club volleyball. So a lot of major universities have, intramural sports, which are amazing, and a lot of universities have varsity sports. But what our organization provides is a opportunity for those kids to, that may not have gotten the looks to play varsity and who are definitely more competitive minded than intramural, to have an opportunity to compete against other universities in their area at pretty high level. We have, like you said, thousands of students that are competing, and they want to continue to play the game that is so amazing and has brought a lot of joy to a lot of people. And yeah, we just try and provide an opportunity for these kids to keep playing. Um, and every year we finish our season with a national championship. And this year we're in Phoenix, and I think, Elliot, are you going?
I am, yeah.
All
Excited.
right, I'll see you there. I'll see you there. So we have over 600 teams, men's and women's teams, that will be competing across, I think, 7 divisions in women and men. Um, and yeah, it's just an opportunity to, you know, compete at the highest level that we can. And it's a pretty amazing time. It's how I met a lot of my best friends. It's how I met my husband. It's an amazing thing to actually see some of my former high school players graduate and go off, and they're playing club, and they're like, I'm so thankful that I had this connection, or I'm so thankful that I had an opportunity to play 4 more years, because not everybody gets that chance at a varsity level. So why not club?
Yeah, 100%. And not all of us get to live in Arizona, so I'm a little
Yeah.
excited to see what Phoenix is like.
Yeah, Phoenix
Uh,
will be great.
Yeah. I mean, coming into college, like I didn't really know a whole lot about club volleyball. Like I knew they had like an Instagram account, so I'd look at that a little bit. But I mean, it's been really cool for me. I like that we get to play tournaments all year round, and we practice
Mhm.
like 3 times a week. So I describe it as like a little bit less intense than like regular D1 or whatever. But like you still get to play at a high level. I mean, I would
Yeah.
say the top teams in men's probably would be running the table in D3, or at least really close to that. There's a
Yeah,
lot of talent. So yeah, so that's been really fun for me. I think if you're not playing college, college club at like a big university is a great way to go too. Um,
absolutely.
so back to the sales. You got a great stretch of D2 competition coming up. You got a try with Altern Fenwick, quad with St. Vincent St. Mary, Mount Vernon, McNick, and then a bunch of CCL matchups in between. What are you kind of looking for? What are your goals for this team in this stretch of matches?
Well, we've gotten to the point in the season where bodies are sore.
Yeah.
So just kind of keeping them working, keeping a positive mindset. We've had injuries here and there that have kind of prevented, some progress at practices. But just, keeping it going, and understanding that having a schedule like we did, or that we do for this season, is only going to make us better in the long run. We faced some adversity last season, and we were able to meet the regional final against St. Charles. So You never know what's going to happen. And I couldn't like buy a match last year. I was only able to schedule 16 matches. So this year being able to schedule, I think I have 21 now. It's amazing and it's tough. And I asked my seniors about it when I was starting to get some feelers out about who would want to possibly play us, and they were like, "Go after it. They want it. They're very motivated. We're going to try and compete at as high a level as we can and get that experience for postseason."
I love it. Great stuff. Well, hey, Coach, thanks for coming on. Best of luck this season.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you guys.
Let's see. All right, that was Andrew Navar. Good to see new face at DeSales doing a great job. So getting into some last week's matches. Big one, Elder over St. X in 4 sets, and then Elder also swept Lakota East. So heck of a comeback from Elder. They started 0-2 on the season at a tri match to Thomas Worthington Louisville St. X. We kind of thought maybe it's another down year for Elder. Then they come out, sweep Moeller, beat X in 4. Now all of a sudden they're sitting at the top of the GCL.
Puts it over the net. Source digs it. Evans out to Kane. Good dig there by Brant. Kelly. Lutz.
Here's the hit.
And
There it is.
Panthers
Panthers take the
go.
lead.
So big props to them. Also, I don't know if this is true, but unless Joe played a little bit as a freshman, but he didn't lose last year at all. St. X lost once. It was without him at Centerville Elite Eight. So this could potentially be the first loss of Joe Taggart's career. What are your thoughts on this pretty huge GCL win by Elder?
I mean, Elder right now looks like the best team in GCL, simply put, and just based off results alone. And I think we talked about this before last week, the idea of that gymnasium, Elder's volleyball wrestling gymnasium, being a home court advantage. It was a home court advantage, especially when this team does good. It wasn't really the case in 2021. They actually played at the pit where the basketball team plays, but 2022, when they made that really good run to the finals, it was the same way. And it feels like they have that same energy again. And again, from a St. X perspective, well, not just from a St. X perspective, a Joe Taggart perspective, he did play on their run to the regional finals in 2023. So he was called up from the JV teams to varsity, and obviously St. X lost to Moeller in 5. But in terms of regular season games, yes, that is the first loss of Joe Taggart's career in terms of games that he has played. But you look at St. X overall, they looked a little bit jumbled up, didn't look really clean, a lot of missed serves as well, a lot of missed hits, including some from Taggart at the end. It wasn't a clean performance from St. X, and obviously in title defense, it's kind of tough. And you didn't get that year after you won in 2019 to really defend your title. You had to wait till 2021, an entirely new team then. But this year you had guys who won the title. You have guys that understands what it takes to get to that level. So I bet St. X, first time they're facing adversity this season, I feel like they can rebound pretty easily.
We saw McNick in the opener try. I came into this, I said if they compete with Moeller, it's a win. How about sweep Moeller? McNick sweeps Moeller, sweeps New Albany to start the season. As a Division II team, that's incredible. I mean, McNick obviously proves they're number one in D2, I think, and then some by this performance. Is Moeller in for a long year? I mean, kind of a rough start by them. Lost to Elder, lost to McNick, lost to Ignatius, just some tough losses early on.
Yeah, and again, you look at Moeller, we talk about it, that this is Moeller, right? They're going to find a way to at least, stay relevant in Region 4, stay relevant in the state. We saw them do it in 2023 when we had them as a number 5 in the rankings, and all of a sudden they were pulling upsets and going all the way to the final. So don't count this Moeller team out, but at the same time, they've had their struggles in the regular season, especially whether or not they've had the players available in the quarter or whatnot. And that's a surprising result too. You don't see a Division two team sweep a Division one team just at any level, let alone a team like Moeller that could be in our top 5, definitely in our top 10. And you look at New Albany, also not the best results for them this weekend. Credit to McNick, in hosting that try and really digging into home court advantage. And like you said, they've proved they're number 1 in Division two. And hell, if they ever had the chance to it, they could compete in Division one.
Saw quad. Berlin took down Pick North, went 3-0 to quad with Mount Vernon, Beaver Creek. Some shaking up results there. Pick North no longer undefeated. Berlin kind of taking that regional match. We had the CCL challenge. Both the St. Charles and DeSales took down Walsh Jesuit. Carroll swept DeSales. St. Charles and Waterson both swept LaSalle, and I was most impressed with Waterson took down St. Vincent St. Mary in 5 sets. So they had an early loss to Mount Vernon in 5 sets, but obviously St. Vincent St. Mary, one of the perennial top teams in Division II the past few years. So Waterson, kind of starting to emerge as someone who we should be looking at.
Yeah, and they were a team that was kind of a fringe top 10 team last year. We didn't really make that much noise. They were behind DeSales and they were definitely behind St. Charles. That's going to be really interesting in Region 5 if we see Waterson matched up with St. Charles. Because if they can beat St. Vincent St. Mary's, who else could they beat? They could take down St. Charles. Possibly they could, hypothetically speaking, at the very least, take a set from McNick. So credit to Waterson again, take care of LaSalle. They actually had a better result against LaSalle just based off the win margin compared to St. Charles sweeping the Lancers. So credit to Waterson and what they're doing, and they're back on our watch list.
Well, we mentioned it. Elder swept Lakota East. Moeller also swept Lakota East. So we kind of thought maybe Lakota East is having a year in the region, but at least they got some work to do clearly based on those results. Thomas Worthington swept Berlin. Leads the OCC Cardinal, or at least tied with Jerome. We'll get to them in a little bit. Say next swept McNick. So pretty competitive 25-20, 26-24, 25-18. So, I mean, competitive out of McNick. I think if they were in D1, they'd probably be right at that number 5 spot about if they're beating Moeller, competing that well with St. X. So good to see from them. Big one last night. We had St. Ignatius struggle to a win in 4 over Jackson.
Kept up off the net from Broby. Overberger. To Regan! Bad news Bears! The Cats defeat the Polar Bears in 4 sets!
Good night, Ohio City!
That was a close one. A lot of errors from St. Ignatius. What were your thoughts on that match?
Yeah, there were a lot of errors, and I think in that second set that Jackson took, I think they looked a little bit more sound. And I think what really came down to it is Ignatius just has a better back line. They were able to really, kind of defend Jackson's kills as that game went along. And I think you take a look at production, Jack Reagan nearly having 20 kills in the match, Andrew Broby for the most part doing some good jobs. I think in general, when you take a look at Ignatius against any team in Region 2, it's just how can you play all around, right? We know about Jack Reagan, we know about Broby, even Henry Van Ginkel also having a good game. It's that defense, it's that back line that really surprised me because even when Jackson took that second set, it still felt like their back line was trying so hard to stay in position that it didn't work. They had to play out of system. And when they played out of system, I mean, it helped them at times, but other times they were just unable to get to the ball. And it led to a lot of easy kills for Ignatius. So again, a very gritty win, very sloppy win from Ignatius's part. And again, Jackson now the second team to take a set from Ignatius this year. So kudos to them. That's a pretty good accomplishment, but nonetheless, Wildcats stay on top.
It actually reminded me a lot of Elder St. X in that it seemed like St. X relied a lot on how Joe Taggart was doing, and Ignatius relied a lot on how Jack Reagan was doing. There was I think, a point in the start of the 4th set, start of the 3rd set maybe, where like Jack Reagan had like 3 errors in a row, and it was like you could feel the whole energy come down. But then once he's back up and getting kills, then everyone's up. And it felt like it's kind of the same thing with Taggart. So I don't know. We'll see. I think the challenge for those teams is going to try to not be as one-dimensional and get everyone going on offense. But obviously, when you have players with that skill on your team, it's tough to not rely on them. Some big results. The OCC Cardinal, we saw Olentangy over Darby in 4, and big one, Jerome over Berlin in 5. So, we haven't really been talking about Jerome, but that's a big win for them. We can start to look at both Olentangy and Jerome. So Olentangy swept Jackson earlier this year. So they're both kind of fringe top 10 teams. Now, obviously, it's always a very competitive conference as we talk about, but Jerome and Olentangy both have some early poor losses. Can we see them overcoming them, breaking into the top 10? Olentangy lost to Olentangy Orange. We talked about beat Jackson, and then Jerome lost to Beaver Creek and lost badly to Ignatius, like 25-9. But now they beat Berlin, so we'll kind of see. I don't know; they don't reflect in our rankings just yet, those upsets. But if they continue playing this way, I think could see them break into the top 10.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I mean, I was surprised with Jerome, but again, and credit to them, they were down 2-1. They took the fourth set and then they took the fifth set. So this is a team that can battle. And again, this game happened at home for the Celtics, but at the same time, if they can string some results together, maybe they can get into the top 10. And that's what we're at right now. And we're probably going to see it more in Division 2 than Division 1, but it comes down to consistency, right? You could have a really good weekend. It's just a matter of can you take that into the next week, continue getting some results, and continue showing that you belong in the top 10 and you belong as a contender in your region.
Looking ahead, some matches this week. We've got another GCL Friday. Love those. Elder travels to LaSalle, looking to start 3-0. I mean, put themselves in good position to at least take a share of the GCL, if not win it outright. Moeller heads to St. X. Big one for both sides. So Moeller trying to get back into it. X trying to rebound from that Elder loss. A win for both would be really big. Saturday, got a big one now. St. Ignatius at Thomas Worthington, both undefeated in Ohio. Thomas Worthington has lost to Louisville St. X, but battle for number one in the state and Elite Eight seed. So based on that, I mean, Thomas has beaten Elder, Moeller's beaten, I'm sorry, St. Ignatius has beaten Moeller, and then Elder's beaten St. X. So I don't really see any other way you could seed it besides St. Ignatius and Thomas Worthington at the 1 or 2. This match kind of deciding that. So, kind of our mid-season, who's on top right now. What are you thinking about that match?
Yeah, I agree with you. That is your who's on top matchup. And again, hopefully this is not the last time we see these two play this year, whether it's at the Centerville Elite Eight or we see them in the playoffs, possibly the state championship. That's probably another really good matchup. And you just don't know how it's going to go because both teams have a really good attack. Both teams have a really good back line. And I think overall, the one thing, and we might have talked about it in the opening week. Thomas Worthington, we've been talking about this team for a while. I know you mentioned this back in 2023, how, they weren't the best that year, but they had a very young squad. And you said just wait a couple of years and they're going to be good. And they've shown that they're really good to start off this year. And St. Ignatius on the other side, I mean, Jack Reagan, best player on his team as a sophomore last year. And now he comes in, he's got one more year of experience and he's got a great crew around him. That's going to be a really good matchup. And like I said, hopefully not the last time we see these two teams play this year.
Yeah, I think what really makes Tom Swords special is just the depth. Like, there's so many skilled players that the fact that you can go to Elder without your two best players and still sweep them and sweep them pretty good. I'm excited to see how that matchup goes. That should be a really fun one. We got to try with St. Charles, St. Vincent, St. Mary, and Firestone. Now, Firestone recently moved down to D2, so this is their first year in there, undefeated. But you look at their schedule; they really haven't played anybody yet. So this is a chance for them to make a statement now against two of the top teams in Division Two. We've got Alter and Fenwick traveling to play DeSales and Watterson, so not technically a quad because DeSales will play Alter and Fenwick, Watterson will play Alter and Fenwick, and then they'll play just the two Columbus teams. But should be a good one for Division Two there. Now Jerome plays at Elder. How are they legit? Can they at least compete with the team that I think we have them at number 3 right now? So Elder playing hot. Can Jerome continue their momentum off their win at Berlin?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting games. In Firestone, you look at their type of production in Division One, it seemed like they weren't necessarily that team, obviously. They weren't really in the top 4 or 5, but they could be a decent 7 seed, 8 seed. I think they might have been close towards 10 over the past couple of years. I know in the OHS BVA era, they I believe were an 8 seed one year. They actually made the finals. So you never know what this Firestone team can do if they can pull some magic and who knows, maybe pull an upset and pop into our rankings. But I mean, I'm looking at that St. Charles, St. Vincent, St. Mary battle, especially with St. Vincent, St. Mary losing that game to Watterson, right? I think even though this is still the team to come out of Region 6, hypothetically speaking, it's just how can they match up against that competition? And knowing that they lost to St. Charles in the state semifinals last year, a lot going for the Irish right now. And then you look at Jerome and Elder, like you said, are they legit? And this is an Elder team that has not lost at home since that opening weekend when they dropped to Louisville St. X and to Thomas Worthington. So if Jerome wants to prove that they can really make some noise in the OCC Cardinal and also in the state, go to the pit. That's going to be a really big win if they can do it in that gymnasium.
Tuesday, we're going to see St. Charles face off against Watterson. Both teams 2-0 in the CCL right now, so a chance to take control of that. Also, really big, we would assume, regional implications there. Could potentially be an argument for the 1 seed. Thursday, we got Jerome play Thomas Worthington. So we talked about Jerome. They're both 3-0 in the OCC Cardinal right now. So two top teams, the win there puts you undefeated in first place alone. And then we got Alter and Fenwick are gonna play. So some big matches coming up this week, especially that Saturday Thomas Worthington Ignatius for the number one in the state. That'll be really cool. All right, so in Division One, those first two spots, we've kind of had them flip-flopped. Obviously, we'll get a consensus answer on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, obviously both great teams there, and then 3, 4, 5. I don't know how else you could really rank this. We've got Elder has beaten St. X, beaten Moeller, and then I think St. X has just been playing better than Moeller. Moller's taken a few more losses. Now 6-10 is where it gets a little more interesting. I had Berlin up at 6. I might have even had him over Moeller, but then the Jerome loss, it's some cause for concern for me. I dropped him down a lot. I was pretty impressed with Jackson. Lakota East, it's just, can they beat anyone above them? That's the problem. They've been playing solid. They've been playing like a solid number 7 team in the state so far, but haven't really been competing. Got swept by Elder, got swept by Moeller, so I'm looking to see a little more out of them. Pick North has lost to Berlin, and then I think St. Ed's rounds out the top 10. Any thoughts on D1 rankings?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same as you. I think I was surprised at the Berlin loss. I originally had Berlin over Moeller, and then that happened. So again, not entirely sure what went down. And again, we've seen this at the OCC Cardinal before, where one team, where A B beats C, C beats A, and all of a sudden you got to look at some rankings. And I feel like that's probably how the OCC Cardinals going to go this year to some extent. But I think Berlin again, another fact of adversity. And I think the one thing that I think is still interesting is Jackson. And I look at Berlin and pick North. The fact that they might be region contenders, in my opinion, just puts them above Jackson. I think that by itself just should be enough. They're teams that are competing, they're fighting, and they're trying to will their way to try to make it to the state tournament. They've put in solid seasons despite recent losses, and I think that's one thing worth noting. And again, Lakota East, like we've said, can they beat anybody? They've gotten the wins they're supposed to win. They've gotten games, they've gotten the victories, but then again, being swept by Elder, being swept by Moeller, well, that doesn't really look that good on your resume, especially since in years past we've seen those GMC teams, or even Walnut Hills to that extent, get those victories on the road, sometimes at home as well. When you took a look at East's schedule this year, again, got swept by Elder, 25-18, 25-18, 25-19, and then got swept by Moeller this week on the road. So that one was at Moeller, but 25-18, 25-21, 25-22. So relatively competitive, but at the same time, I mean, East is still going to stay in just because they're playing a relatively speaking strong schedule. So if they get the results they're supposed to win, they're going to stay in, but I don't see them moving it much at all.
Yeah, and to your point about Jackson, I mean, they played well, but the feeling the entire match, I feel like, even when Jackson won set two, was like, Ignatius is probably going to come back and win this. So, are they the favorite to compete against Ignatius in a regional final? Probably, yeah. But I don't know. I still think bet the house on Ignatius coming out of the region. I don't see anyone else really challenging them yet. All right, Division Two. McNick obviously still number one. I think St. Charles has proven themselves to be number two. I've got Alter coming in at 3, and then Waterston, St. Vincent, St. Mary. You just got Alter at 5, and then Fenwick. I got Roger Bacon at 7, and then Mount Vernon, and then Baden and Carroll round out both our top tens. Now, Roger Bacon, I do want to touch on kind of unproven talent. Most of the results on here you can kind of look at based on head to head and kind of put together rankings. It's more like a puzzle, I think. But Roger Bacon is just, they've got Andrew Wigan, but they haven't really beaten anyone yet. They should be good, but we don't really know. So they're still unproven. But I think we both have, kind of faith in that program that we've got them up in our top 10.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, Roger Bacon, relatively speaking, made it to the regional semifinals last year. They have proven what it means to get to that level. And again, they haven't played anybody else in these rankings, but they've done a relatively good job to start off this year. And I bet they have a good squad coming back. Again, we talked about Andrew Wigan and the other players around him. This is a team that's starting to mature over time and trying to piece something together. Just looking at the rest of my rankings, again, Baden and Carroll was kind of an interesting thing. Carroll had a really good weekend, when they took on teams from the rest of Division Two. Again, swept DeSales, swept Hartley, And it felt like for a while you could put Carroll, at a 6 or 7, and it could be all right. But then yesterday happens and they get swept by Baden. And
Right.
that was, I mean, if you look at it from a score perspective, that was a pretty ugly loss for Carroll, too. They got swept on the road and they had a really rough start. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the score was decided pretty early on. Baden won that 25-11, 25-9, 25-18. So it looked like the Rams were going to take it from the jump. That's just how that game went. So credit to Baden. And again, Carroll, despite having a rough start to the season, have a really good weekend. But at the same time, this goes back to what I said earlier. It comes down to consistency. And that's what's going to keep you in the rankings overall.
All right, that'll do it for this week of Ohio Volley Talk. Here, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, there's a lot more competition. We saw a lot of competition last week, and there's going to be a lot more this week, and things are only going to ramp up, and we're going to have to go to parity, especially in Division Two. But this is the type of competition we love, right? This is where you just get to sit back, relax, and see who takes matches here and there.
I love it, man. It's big matches, big seeding implications at the Elite Eight, which is next week. So next Saturday. So that'll be cool. With that, this has been Ohio Volley Talk, and we will catch you next week.